get back into worship quickly, but I have just a quick little mini Devo for you that I want to share. And like every week, I always say, please go grab one of those Bibles. There is no way we are starting this year without the Word of God. And that's what I want to share with you. Something that God has been speaking to me. And so I'm going to walk you through my sort of year-end evaluation. And maybe this is an invitation for you to do this. Maybe you already did this. But as you pray and process and you think back to this whole last year, I got to get my phone out because I wrote out my notes on here. I think if I was being totally honest about the things under the things, you know? You go through life and you're like, oh, that sucked, or that hurt, or that moment felt like a lot. We have an emotional reaction, and this is just a newsflash for some of you if you never knew this. Underneath anger is usually sadness. Did you know that? We just think anger is bad and then we move on. I don't know. That was something I learned last year that was a little bit mind-blowing. But there's always something underneath the things. So if you're being completely honest about the things under the things that we feel a little prickly about, if I'm being totally honest about the things under the things, the real fears underneath the things that brought up anxieties over the last few weeks, there's fears like the fear of failure or of being rejected and alone that still haunt me. And I'm looking back at this year going, dang, there was too many of those were driving my year, or my moments, or the hard times. That's not who I want to be. Oh shoot, I lost my note. There we go. And then if I you think about, okay, you're looking at one thing, and this is all I see through this filter of fear that actually probably was masked with a whole lot of other emotions or thoughts about what life was going to look like this year. It looks pretty dim. It literally got me overwhelmed and stuck in my seat. I don't know what to do next. A future without those sounds like literal confidence, walking in with total security and peace. And so I love that Ephesians 2 says that it's by God's grace that we've been saved through faith, and that it's not of your own doing. All of my fears are that everything relies on me. I'm alone, and I need to make sure I'm secure or loved. I don't have someone who has my back. But Ephesians 2 reminds me that it is not of your own doing, that it is a gift of God, not of works. For exactly that, for those very fears, God knew that, and he said, it's not going to be about what you do. It's going to be what I've done for you, that you're going to be okay. So that kind of future, and to paint that picture and look at, well, dang, anything ahead of me, whatever the world throws at me, whatever life has for me, or whatever challenges God presents me, whatever opportunities there are that look overwhelming, I feel secure and confident in those. So then I think about a new way of life, asking God, okay, what do you want me to do then? Right? Instead of being oh God, what do I do? My prayer instead gets to be, okay, God, what do you want me to do? To actually genuinely ask him. So I invite you to do that right now, to genuinely ask him, what do you want me to do? The opposite of a fear-driven life, to me at least, is a life of love, and a life of knowing deeply that I am loved. There's not a better picture to me than Ephesians 5:1. Therefore, it says, be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us, and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. It says, first of all, to just paint that picture, looking at how good our God has been, how much he loves you as an object of that love. You're not just a part of this has to do with what we put before our eyes, what we're thinking about, what we fixate on, because I realize all of these possibly negative or overwhelming things that I fixate on that are other than the truth. But if we were to put God's love in front of us, and this isn't a love that you admire when you watch a movie, or there's a couple that you really care about and you're watching them walk down the aisle and you're like, that's so cool, I love that love, but it's for them, not for you. But this is a love that is coming towards you as a dearly loved child, that these are words that God is continually speaking over you every day in that moment when you feel alone or afraid of being rejected, or all of the weight of everything is on your shoulders. In those moments, you are being called into that. And I'm going to pick up my Bible just a second. That verse, Ephesians 5, it starts with a therefore. And you always have to ask, like, what is the therefore? You want to know what the verse before it says? It says in verse 32 of chapter 4, it says, be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you. Why do we do it? Because God knew all of your stuff, all of how last year was going to go, of how well you would carry yourself last week. And in Christ, he forgave you. How tender-heartedly, lovingly he moved towards you. And then when I asked God, okay, what do you want me to do this year? What is that going to look like? I felt like my answer, I got two answers. When it came to my gifts, asking God, okay, what do you want me to do with this? Instead of asking how to use the gifts that God's given me as a solution to my fears, like, what are you doing in my life to fix the things with me? Instead of, how can I use them for me? I felt like his answer was, those are meant to be billboards. My gifts are meant to point towards me. And the answer that he wants that billboard to say is, God is with you. And I'll have a little ad right now. For a couple weeks ago, we had our Christmas market out there, and Junie, Jules, she did this little permanent bracelet on my wrist. I think it's like one of my favorite things I've ever gotten, because it's like stuck on me, and it is this reminder, like, it is always with me. And it means more than that. It means God is with me. And that should change everything. How simple would that be? God is with me. I get to walk into this with confidence. God is with me, so showing up in my brokenness is everything. Like it said, Ephesians 5:1, be imitators of God as his beloved children, and walk in love, as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. That might look like forgiving one another. Showing up for others the same way Christ has shown up for us. And that might look like a sacrifice. But the thing is, when we take our eyes off of looking at something that, like this scary dark box of all of our fears, of the deep things under the things that we kind of ignore, and that's what drives us, it's really hard to do all of those things. It's really hard to find space to love others, to give grace, to show up. We feel like our resources are limited. Like, I'm only loved so much, so how could I possibly love someone else? But if we come back, I was reading this Devo this morning, and had a quote from someone. I wish I could quote the actual person, but he was talking about how the love of God and who God is like a spring bubbling up from the ground, and it is continually bubbling, and there's more about it. You don't just you're like, oh, that was really cool, and then you walk away, but that you're so enamored with it that you want to continue to watch to see what happens, that there's more, and there's newness, and there's goodness coming from it. That stirs up a devotion, a desire to offer everything so that you could be a fragrant offering, because you've experienced that continually bubbling up of God's goodness, and his love is what would drive an entire life of sacrifice to him, where we can be a people that live as living sacrifices for him, saying yes to whatever he has in front of us without fear. Letting any fears or even our strengths and our gifts and our talents just be billboards for our God to say, he's with you. God is with you. That's everything. We get to say yes to that. So our response then is, we've had this incredible time of worship, going, who is this God? He's so worthy of all of our attention. He's holy. He's done all of these things. He's changed my yesterdays. They're in the past now, and he is now in my tomorrows. The only response that makes sense is a yes, is open hands. You get to hold that view, not of the fears that are chasing you behind you, or of what you've done, or your mistakes, but the newness and the hope of that bubbling spring of who God is, what he's inviting you into, how he loves you. So we're just going to pray a prayer together. If you guys want to open up your hands with me, it's a pretty simple prayer. Jesus, we're going to put ourselves back in your hands as your people. God, would our answers to you be yes? With trust, with surrender. God, would our lives be billboards that scream to the world, God, you are with us. You can have all of our yes, all of the yes of every single next day, God. We would come back to, you're worthy of it, you deserve it.